Good morning, everyone. It's Craig Studnicki from ISG and Related ISG, welcoming you to our 2023 actual annual report. It's the whole outlook for this coming year. And I know it's early May, and you're probably wondering what took us so long to put together the outlook for 2023. Things have been changing. Things have been changing very dynamically, dramatically right under our noses, and we had to delay this for a little bit in order to get the math right. So today I'm going to walk you through it, and I promise you, I think it's the best Miami report that we've ever produced. We're going to start with these headlines. Some of them were from December, some of them are from earlier this year. That confirms a lot of things that we already know. Californians are moving here, New Yorkers are moving here, lots of people working in Florida when they come here. New York is now the #1 feeder market. In the Miami housing market, while it's cooled down compared certainly to what it was just 1 year ago, it's bucking the national trend. Are all these headlines true? They are extremely true, and there's so much more behind it because Miami now is in momentum. It's in momentum that is truly unprecedented. It's nothing I ever saw, nothing I could even forecast. I think you're going to feel the same way when we finish our presentation. At the end of September, which was Q3 last year, we announced that there were 122 companies that have made the decision to commit to moving to South Florida, mostly Miami, but it includes Palm Beach, it includes Fort Lauderdale. That number has now grown to 134. What you're seeing here are a few slides of just a few of the companies like Elliott, Carl Icahn, Blackstone, Citadel. That's the big story, right? Not to leave out Goldman Sachs, of course, that are opening a regional office in the Fort Lauderdale area. These are a few of 134 companies. There's about 15 of them that have been here as of the end of September. Now it's up to like 17. The rest are packing. This by itself is beyond unprecedented for Miami. And I got news for you because I looked it up. It's unprecedented for any city in the United States, certainly in the last 100 years or so. That's how big this is for Miami. That's how big this information is today. All of that helped contribute to this next slide. In 2017, President Trump passed major tax legislation that affected the entire country, and it's probably the tax law of the land for probably another 10 years or so. The big winners of this were Florida and Texas. I never imagined a year ago that we would pass Texas as as the fastest growing state by population in the U.S., but we did. We grew by over 1,200 people a day. Number 2 was Texas at 1,100. We were the two big winners from Donald Trump's tax reform of 2017. The two states that got hurt the most are the two most expensive states in the United States to live in today, and that's California and New York. The two main feeder markets of Florida right now are New York and California. California turned out to be 50 out of 50 states. It lost over 900 people a day last year. And look at California. It lost over 800 people a day. And when I show these numbers, let me remind you that the U.S. Census does it this way. They measure births, they subtract deaths, they add people that moved into a state, they subtract people moving out of a state, and all of that equals X. And X for New York is minus 820 people a day. For California, it's minus almost 1,000 people a day. For Texas, it's plus 1,100. For Florida, it's plus 1,200. Yeah, we are by far now the fastest growing state in the country. And we don't even talk about the big 3, the big 4, the big 5, because it's really the big 2. Texas and Florida were the two big winners from Tax Reform 17. And 2020 acted as a catalyst to make it all so. 2020. This is what it's done for me and for all of you. I've owned ISG for over 30 years. Related ISG is now in its 14th year. And for all of those years, most of my business came from Latin America. This bar chart shows you that 10 years ago, it was all dominated by Latin America. 21% was US, Canada, Europe, other. Everything has flipped. Now, the market is dominated by US, and that blue bar, it is growing every single day. This next slide shows the depth and breadth of what happens when people come here. There are now more people working in the state of Florida than there are in the entire state of New York. So whether they're coming from California, or they're coming from New York, or they're coming from Michigan, or they're coming from Texas, or they're coming from Illinois, where Chicago is, or my home state, New Jersey, it just doesn't, when they come here, they find work. They find work. Part of the reason is this next slide. Some economists will tell you we're still in a recession. It's kind of hard to wrap your head around that when the national unemployment is less than 4%. In Florida, it's less than 3%. In Miami, it's less than 1.5%. when people come here, they find work. If you're not working, it's because you don't want to work, because there's lots of jobs in South Florida, lots of jobs. And with these 134 companies moving here, more and more jobs are being created. Thank goodness that a lot of these companies are bringing their employees with them, because we need the human resources to accommodate these 134 companies. And let me just make a 20-second comment about this move. This is an extremely expensive move for these companies. Let's just think about Citadel for 1 second. Citadel is uprooting their entire organization from Chicago to Miami. That means the economic cost of that, of just moving a whole company to another city, is tremendous. Now try to imagine the human resource expense, because some of the folks that have been working for Citadel forever in Chicago want to come, some don't. How do you deal with that? Well, I'm not sure. I just know it's a huge effort to deal with all of those human beings and all of those families that are part of those moves. Now multiply that times 134. When I tell you that this is unprecedented, the economic expense, the human resource expense is tremendous, and yet they've all made the decision to come to South Florida. For me to forecast to you what all of this means by the end of this year is impossible. But I can tell you that it's not just unprecedented. The wave of momentum that is supporting South Florida, the real estate and the business environment, just hard to explain. Best thing I can do is just show you the facts. And hopefully we all get caught up in the enthusiasm of what this new Miami means. Here's another example of what this actually does mean. So last year, this is Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and Palm Beach combined, houses and condos combined. Look at this graph. In Q1 of last year, we were in dangerously low levels of inventory, 12,000 units of housing, houses and condos combined in 3 counties. That's like 0. That was really scary. But a couple things happened last year, right? We were in a recession, 2 consecutive business quarters in a row of negative GDP equals a recession. That was Q2 and Q3 of last year, so we're in a recession. And mortgage rates literally doubled. We were at 3.5% a year ago, and then by the end of the year, we were at 7%. That's a double. So as a result, the velocity of sales here in South Florida did slow down. You see it even in these numbers. So Q1 to Q2, Q2 to Q3. You see how the inventory, the combined inventory grew. Until the end of last year, we were at almost 23,000. We got some relief. And I'm saying it's just some relief, because the number just above that, 22,928, you see that Q1 2020 equals 45,022. Listen, that's how many houses and condos we had to sell, you and me, in January of 2020. We didn't know about a virus. We didn't know anything that was coming in 2020. We did not know that 2 months later we were all going to be in quarantine. We were in a normal world with 45,000 units of housing to sell. Housing, again, houses and condos combined. So when we got to 22,900 last year, yippee, but it's still half of what we're used to. Now the American effect, or the Miami miracle effect, the Mayor Francis Suarez effect. From Q4 of last year through March of this year, look what happened. This is part of our 2023 forecast. Expect this to continue this year, and you're going to understand why in about 5 minutes. But look what happened. We have a 24% decrease in inventory in the last 3 months. So many of you, and so many of my own agents, I hear it too from buyers. I'm waiting before I make my purchase decision. What are you waiting for? I'm waiting for prices to drop, because let's face it, we're in a recession and mortgage rates are still a little high. I'm going to wait for them to drop to somewhere in the 6s, the low 6s, hopefully the high 5s. Well, the amount of Americans that are moving here from all corners of the United States, perhaps with these 134 companies, perhaps because they just got tired of paying high taxes in states like California, Illinois, New Jersey, New York, they are not waiting. They took a giant bite out of our inventory from January 30th to March 30th. I really do believe that this trend line will continue through the rest of this year, and this graph is the reason. Just look at this for 1 second. Last year, 438,000 people moved to Florida, permanent residents. That was the net number. If that number should just match this year, we're not projecting more, we're just projecting the same kind of demand from 2022. That means that over 200,000 people moved to South Florida last year. That's Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach County. How do we know that? Because we know that more or less 50% of 1,200 a day moves to South Florida. Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties. You see it on the highways. You maybe didn't know the exact numbers when you woke up this morning, but you do see it on the highways and byways. You see it with restaurant reservations. You see it in entertainment facilities, whether you're going to a concert or you're going to the Heat game. You are watching crowded conditions everywhere because all these people are moving here. Well, look at this next slide, because here's what we did. We took the 22,000 units, or now the 17,000 units of inventory that we have, houses and condos combined, and we broke it out by county. Last year, more or less, 73,000 people per county relocated to each county last year. 73,000 people moved to Palm Beach, 73,000 people moved to Broward, 73,000 moved to Dade. Look at the amount of people that moved versus the amount of inventory we have to sell. I'm expecting that the trend line of reduced inventory and continued acceleration in the purchase prices of houses and condos will continue this year because we're not getting much relief from pre-construction. I'll explain why in 1 second. Let me break out the single-family homes for you with some specificity. So the actual reduction of single-family homes was 18% from Q4 to Q2, where it went from 11,000 to just over 8,000. And here's been the effect of prices. So again, the premise behind these forecasts is that population gains in 2023 will more or less mimic last year. That means that if demand stays the same and supply is reducing, well, we know what happens with prices, and it shows in the houses. The houses are up. Single-family houses, Tri-County, are up by 8% in the last year. What's it look like? I've discussed this before. We have an A and a B and a C house. The A house is a contemporary design, probably no more than 10 to 15 years old, and it's on the water. Not many A houses. And that's for one simple reason. I know I've mentioned this before, but I do think it's worth repeating. When you talk to most Americans, you ask them about South Florida. You ask them what their mental picture is. It's those blue turquoise waters. It's those blue turquoise waters, where it's the ocean, the intracoastal, the bay. They see water, water, water. Can you blame them? I live on the ocean, so I totally get it. And that's what they want. They want those kinds of houses first and foremost. Their second choice will be what we call the B house. It looks just like the A, it's just not on the water. And everything else is a C. Where you can see we've seen a reduction in B houses, a clear reduction in A houses, a little relief in Cs, and we need those because they're priced between $400,000 to $1.2 million. That's kind of the sweet spot of what most of the employees are willing to pay that are moving here with those 134 companies. That's actually a very nice thing for all of us. Condos, ooh, this is where it's starting to get a little nerve-wracking. Condos saw the biggest reduction in inventory. We went from 11,900 to 8,400. That's almost a 30% decrease in inventory. Look what happened with prices. Again, if the population numbers stay the same, look, you're gonna and the inventory reduces as it did. Look what happened to prices. Prices are up by 24%. And yes, ISG and related ISG. What are we saying? Expect this trend line this year to continue because we're not getting any relief from pre-construction. You're not going to get any for a while, and yet people are moving here. We are the fastest growing state in the country, and they're coming and they're buying, and they're not waiting for mortgages to change up, down, sideways, or otherwise. They're buying. In terms of inventory, with condos, more one-bedrooms to sell, a few more two-bedrooms. Thank goodness for that, because two-bedrooms are becoming more and more popular than ever, but not compared to the threes. We're now down to under 300 three-bedrooms to sell, Tri-County. That's less than 100 three-bedroom condos per county. It's what we refer to as supply shock. And this is what I mean by pre-construction. There are over 6,600 units that have been presented to the South Florida market since 2020. 6,600 in 46 buildings. Sounds good. Sounds like a little bit of relief. Here's the issue. There's only 1,176 that are actually under construction in 12 buildings. That's it. When I say under construction, there's only 1,176 that are going vertical. The rest are still working out their construction loan issues with their construction lenders. The other 34 condo buildings are selling extremely well. This is not a sales problem. Focus on existing inventory in multiple listing because we're already seeing a reduction in the inventory and consequently prices are going up. So folks, this next slide puts it all in perspective. In the 2000s, we built too many. We built almost 59,000 condos between Miami and Fort Lauderdale. Yeah, they all got built and they all got sold, but it was a little bit too much. In the last cycle, we built almost 20,000. I actually think that's the right number, just to meet demand, because of all these companies that are moving here and all these individuals that are moving here with or without these companies, as I've mentioned. 6,600 that's in pre-construction, of which you now know there's only 1,100 that are going vertical. Heck, if all 6,600 were going vertical, it's still not enough. And why? Well, we're about to have a conversation with the mayor, because the mayor has coined this phrase, the Miami miracle. And only he can explain, because it's actually his invention, but it's also very real. The Miami miracle has taken root, and it has made Miami the most popular real estate market, certainly in the United States, the most talked about real estate market in the world. Mayor Suarez, you have to catch a plane, because that's the story. That's the story of your life lately.
Yeah.
So I'm going to hit the ground running, if I may.
Yeah.
This Miami miracle, I talk about it every now and then, but I know that a lot of these folks don't understand the depth and breadth of it. But before I ask you that question, I'm going to read you a quote. Because 2 months ago, yeah, huh? 2 months ago,
politicians and their quotes.
He was interviewed by Newsweek magazine in February, and he said, and I quote, "We are a nation of miracles. From the exceptional blessings of our land to the endurance of our institutions. My pastor described a miracle as the point where God's grace meets human hope. You have described your vision of today's Miami, which I'm calling this new Miami, as the Miami miracle, which bodes well for both not just the economic prospects for South Florida and Miami, but its livability. Mr. Mayor, what is the Miami miracle?"
Well, it's, I'll tell you this, there's a saying in the churches of Miami, they see the glory, but they don't know the real story.
Yeah.
Right? So I watched the Super Bowl on a transcontinental flight to Japan to try to bring a direct flight to Miami. Last night I watched the Heat game on a flight from New York City. I woke up at 4:30 in the morning, got in my cold plunge, and got on a 6:45 flight, spent the entire day in New York recruiting people, left on a flight that was supposed to leave at 8 o'clock. Actually left closer to 9, got home at about 12:30, went to bed. About 1:30, got up and was for my daughter's 5th-year birthday party in her school in the morning. So that's how much I love the city. You have to love it till it hurts. You have to be willing to make sacrifices. And the Miami miracle is about a fundamental belief in the greatness of this country and how we can project that greatness through building the most amazing city. And so in Miami, we do 3 things. I tell people, and we do 3 things well. We keep your taxes low. So we lower taxes to the lowest level in history. Property taxes have never been lower. We've lowered the millage rate to the lowest level in our history. And we grew 12%, the second most growth in recorded history in our city. We keep people safe. I just talked about our homicide numbers, right? 50% below a 1964 per capita low. Think about the juxtaposition of the markets our competitors are in. New York, Philadelphia, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco. Then think Sao Paulo, Rio, Bogota, right? And some other parts of the world, right? Safety is important. People make, and you were talking about this sort of before, to make a decision to move your family or your business.
Yes.
It's a massive decision. You have to get your kids out of school. They have to make new friends, right? Your family might be there. So think about the level of desperation that it requires to do that. It is not easy. So we're building an ecosystem that is meant to make that decision as easy as possible, right? And then the third thing is we lean into innovation. We understand that for us to be successful, we have to create the most dynamic environment in the world. Steve knows this in his work with Swire, building one of the most dynamic companies in the world. And we're thankful that he has invested so much in Miami. Thank you for your leadership, Steve. Why don't we put our hands together for Steve Owens from Swire, formerly from Swire. A true pioneer and a true believer in our city. When you want to, if you think I believe in our city, plug down $1.4 billion in cash, and then you can say you really believe in the city. But we've built a city that is number 1 in wage growth, number 1 in tech job growth, number 1 in tech job migration, number 1 in direct foreign investment, number 1 in pandemic recovery. We've reduced poverty by 50% in the last 20 years. We used to be the homicide capital of America in 1980 with 220 homicides. Last year we had 47. This year, 8 is too much, but we have 8 in 4 months. I mean, on an annualized basis, that would be 32. Okay, an incredible reduction. There are cities that have 8 in a weekend. And so we are really focusing on pressing our advantage and understanding that the world is disruptive and changing very fast. And if, as a father of two, a 9 and a 5-year-old, I'll wrap it up now.
No, you're doing it.
As a 9 and a 5-year-old, I'm really concerned about the world they're going to be inheriting, not just for myself, but frankly for all of you.
Let me bring you back to December 4th, 2020. A nice young software engineer from Silicon Valley. He sent a tweet out.
Yeah.
And the tweet reads, "Hey guys, just hear me out. What if we move Silicon Valley to Miami?" Again, December 2020. And Mayor Francis Suarez responds with, "How can I help?" Mayor Suarez, what the hell happened from you answering that tweet?
I was just really tired on a Friday at home, laying in bed. You know those Fridays where you just you struggle to take off, take off even your work clothes.
Oh boy, yes, even your hair hurts.
Bed, and all of a sudden this tweet comes through my Twitter thread. And the truth is that we had been trying to do this for 15 years. A lot of people focus on the tweet and what happened post the tweet, right? We had this incredible $2.5 trillion of assets under managed companies come here, the 130 plus companies that you're talking about, $9 billion in wages, making us #1 in the nation in wage growth. So all that happened. But I think we were trying to do this. This was in sort of the venture world. We used to be bootstrapped, right? In the private equity world, we would say we were bootstrapped. We were a company that made small and strategic investments to try to build an ecosystem. We started a tech fair called Emerge, which we just had a few days ago. We had an awesome showing with Eric Schmidt that I interviewed and with Tom Brady that came the day before. We started really making strategic investments in accelerators and incubators, right? That's how you build an ecosystem. And then I think we caught a tsunami wave of opportunity. And that was the juxtaposition, these 4 macro factors of the SALT deduction going away. You
right.
call it tax.
Well, from Tax Reform 17.
Tax Reform 17.
Right.
I say the SALT deduction going away. You had innovators in places like New York and California being kicked out, right? You had famously in New York, the HQ2 prize, I'm winning. And I was surprised that they won the HQ2 prize. We were in the running for the HQ2 prize. And then all of a sudden they say, no, thank you. It's not just about the 50,000 jobs that you say no to, high-paying jobs, by the way, right? Or the fact that you said F Elon Musk and he replied, message received, and took his entire Tesla factory to Austin, right? It's the signaling effect, right? The signaling effect is far more powerful than one company and one person. The signal is, if you're successful, if you want to build success in my city, we don't want you. And so I've had reporters, and there's some sitting in the second row there, who asked me about crypto. And it's a legitimate question, right? It's a totally legitimate question. I totally understand it. But the signaling effect that we wanted to send is, if you're going to create next generation technology, we want you here. And what is the result? We're #1 in the nation in Gen Z tech workers, period. Which bodes well for the next 5 to 10 years, because they see that we're embracing innovation. We're not scared of innovation or thinking that every single iteration of that innovation is going to succeed. I remember Netscape and Napster. I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember that. Right? They don't exist, but the technologies that they created do exist and have changed the world. Netscape in terms of Google and Safari, et cetera, and Napster in terms of Spotify but we, by the way, has an office in Miami, and Apple Music. So they've revolutionized the world, right? And so we want to be at the forefront of AI. We want to be in the forefront of quantum computing. We want to be at the forefront of how that intersects with crypto, because I think we're in a place where you're going to start to see a lot of use cases come out of crypto through a winter that is beneficial to crypto, just like the AI winter was beneficial for AI.
You know, part of the reason I'm asking these questions about all the Americans that are moving here is I'm trying to unveil the underpinnings behind their motivation to move here, and once again, that longevity attached to it. You know, all my life, the financial capitals of the world have always been New York and London and New York. I have promoted in my report in the past that we refer to Miami every now and then as the Wall Street of the South, but that's ISG saying it. Now it's Mayor Francis Suarez talking about the capital of capital markets and capital aggregation. Yeah. I know they would love to hear you explain professorially. This is your concept, sir.
Yeah, so the concept was born out of the thought that when I was growing up, we were known as the capital of Latin America, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's wonderful. Many of us came from Latin America. We love Latin America. We love to visit Latin America. But as a native-born Miami, and as Joe was saying, Miami's been in existence for 127 years. I'm the first mayor of Miami born in Miami, right? In the 127-year history, I'm the first son of a mayor in the history of the city. My dad was the first Cuban mayor of Miami. When you love your city, or you love your company, or you love your family, you always want to grow. You always want to do more. You always want to take the next step in the evolution that you see of what you're doing, right? You're managing an ecosystem. As a mayor, it's not just that you're running a billion-dollar company with 4,500 employees and 4 labor unions, right? It's that you're running an ecosystem of hundreds of thousands of souls. And frankly, because we punch above our weight, and you look at your statistics, a lot of them cite the Tri-County area.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you live in Boca and you're in Provence, are you going to tell the people in Provence that you live in Boca, or are you going to say you live in Miami? Right? So I have that responsibility, and it weighs on me because I love this community. And as I look at what is the responsibility of a mayor or a president for that matter, it's to position the country or the city to capitalize on competitive opportunities. And so for me, what I saw was a quad-generational disruption from a highly industrial economy to a highly digital economy. And I wanted us to position ourselves to capture and ride that wave. And so that was part of what it was about. And secondly, I realized that the world is becoming more decentralized. And so what's important is where will capital be aggregated and deployed? Mm-hmm. Where are the places where those decisions are going to be made? And we're in the middle of 7 mega markets, almost geographically, New York, California, Chicago, South America, the Middle East, Europe, and now Asia. And none of those markets are closer to the others than we are, and we're trying to get direct flights to all of them. We're working on one to Saudi, we're working on one to Japan, hopefully to Korea in our lifetime or in the next 10 years. And that's how we expand our reach, by staying connected.
That will transform Miami then into, without question, one of the big financial hubs, of the world. It's becoming kind of like that, now to a great extent. When you are constantly selling, and I know you are constantly selling Miami to these companies, and clearly 134 have already said yes. What is it, and it sound somewhat repetitive, but what are the common denominators about Miami, like the top 3, the top 5, that hit the hot buttons of the CEOs of these companies when Mayor Francis Suarez walks in and sells Miami?
I'll try to talk about ones that I haven't already mentioned, right? So cleanliness. People often remark to me that the city is very clean. The fact that we have relatively low levels of homelessness, right? We had, according to the last census, we went down from 640 homeless, and I'm talking about the city proper, down to 608 homeless, and we have, we're, as far as I know, the first major city in urban America to put out a comprehensive plan to get to 0. We want to be the first major urban city in America to have 0 homeless, because I think it says something about our identity. We're not just a place for the wealthy. We're a place that cares about the least, the last, and the lost. And it's part of our mission, it's part of our social responsibility, and it's part of how we define ourselves. And I think that's important. And I think, people want to live in places like that. I think qualitative things like being named the happiest city in America, the healthiest city in America. I tell people all the time when they ask me, well, how do you get your crime numbers down so much? And I said, well, we never got into the defund police nonsense, right? And we gave our officers, we pay them well, we have labor peace. We have the most officers we've ever had. We give them all the best technology to do their jobs. But in addition to that, we have a 1.7% unemployment rate. And we're the happiest and healthiest city in America. So if you're happy, you're healthy, you're working, there's police presence, there's less of an opportunity for violent crime. I mean, that's just logical. That's not like rocket science. So I think to build a successful city, you have to look at it holistically and comprehensively.
You were born in Miami. You are the son of a previous, si, senor. You are the son of a previous mayor here in Miami. So the Republican Party and yourself are going to take you places where, frankly, we would love to see you.
Vamos a ver.
Do a lot of the same kind of good you've done for South Florida for both the rest of Florida, perhaps the rest of this country. So I want to ask you a kind of a pretend question. Okay. It's 5 to 10 years from now. But I have to bring you back to 2020 from that answer to that tweet.
Yeah.
Hey, what do you think about moving Silicon Valley to Miami? How can I help? Turned into 134 companies, and it's growing. And I haven't even talked to you yet about the small satellite businesses that are moving with these companies to service these companies. This is
And the law firms.
and then the law firms, and then the banks. It's when I say it's unprecedented, it's not just
The
unprecedented
consulting
for us.
companies.
It's unprecedented for any other.
ISG, you know,
Yeah, no.
McKinsey is increasing its workforce by 400%. You know, full FTEs. I mean, it's incredible.
I mean, sometimes they call this exponential growth, and it's very hard to measure it and actually visualize it. But capital markets, capital aggregation, the Miami Miracle. Sir, this is all 100% your vision that you sold, and you sold it. So it's 5-10 years from now, whether you're living on Pennsylvania Avenue or some other place in the United States, what does Miami look like?
Yeah, it's pretty good real estate.
Well, damn good real estate, yeah.
Okay. That's what we're talking about, real estate. It's a nice house.
Yeah.
It's nicer than mine. Not for sure.
Very nice.
It's got more fun, more toys.
It's got a nice, it's got a rose garden. It's got all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Look, what is my vision for Miami? It's not too different from my vision for this country, right? My vision for this country is that we need a country that can understand and thrive in a disruptive, dynamic, competitive environment. We've never been afraid to compete, not as a city, not as Miami, where many of us fled our country of birth, right, which was taken over by people who said, give me all your property, give me all your businesses, don't worry, we'll make everybody equal. And they did. They made everybody equally miserable and equally poor. Okay? And thank you. And that's fundamentally un-American. And I understand sometimes there's a temptation for government to be the answer to everyone's problem all the time. But unfortunately, that's not the way our country works. That's not what makes our country the country that it is. And we need to lean into that. The American dream is different for every single one of us, but I promise you, one of the things I love about realtors the most is that there's very few people, very few professions that live with the fire of the American dream more intensely than all of you do because of the amount of time and energy and dedication that you put into your jobs. You guys don't take days off. You don't have that luxury. I remember a good friend of mine who I went to high school with, who was a realtor, who used to tell me, I work 28 out of 31 days. And the 3 days that I don't work, I take a 3-day cruise just to make sure that I can. I mean, that is unbelievable work ethic, right? And that's what our country needs to get back to in terms of understanding that we are a country that if you work hard, if you get educated, if you risk capital, you have an opportunity to be successful. It's the beauty of our country. And unfortunately, I see that that dream slipping away. And frankly, I'm not as worried for my generation, although what we've seen in the last couple of years is unprecedented levels of incompetence that have made the United States suffer in ways that I thought were unimaginable, and frankly, turn back the clock to times that precede some of the most horrific times in our world. But what I see is a world where my 9-year-old and 5-year-old's life is less secure. And for me, having helped to build what I think is the most dynamic ecosystem on the planet in the city of Miami, I just think we're going to need someone that has the energy and the enthusiasm and the focus to take those same principles, keeping taxes low, keeping people safe, and leaning into innovation, and scale it across this country to create a generation of American prosperity.
You have
I know I'm doing good with when my sergeant at arms is giving me
a thumbs up.
That means
Because you weren't happy about
I hear
the
you
Super
all the
Bowl
time.
thing,
That's
I
pretty
know.
good. You got me going.
I think you've transformed Miami into the model city for the U.S. and perhaps the world. And I think this is, I mean, for all of us in real estate, we're still trying to wrap our heads around the Miami Miracle, but you were so helpful in piercing that bubble today.
Hopefully,
Folks,
we got more than 500,000 views today, hopefully.
Yeah, we're going to, look, no, let's get a new record. Come on,
Well,
we're at
let's go.
534. Come on.
It's on you.
Okay. This is the moment where I'm going to ask you all to stand and stretch your legs, and more particularly, show our gratitude and appreciation for everything that Mayor Suarez does for us each and every day. Who better to present the Miami Miracle than the mayor? And hopefully you see it like I do. I believe it because I see it every single day. The sustainability of this new Miami, of this Miami Miracle, I think we're all kind of convinced this could easily be a 10-year plus paradigm shift.